Hey there Trekkies, my name is Michael aka the TrekLad and welcome back to my channel. Set a course for the content buffet because today I'm embarking on an epic mission. That epic mission is simple. I'm going to talk about and review every Star Trek episode ever made, and I'm starting with the Next Generation. Why? Because that's where I want to start, damn it. As we're beginning some 20 years after the genesis of Star Trek, I think it's only fair that we begin this video, this first video, with a bit of a history lesson. This lesson I like to call The Road to 1987. The year is 1969, the year of Woodstock, the Beatles making Crossing the Road iconic, and yes, Richard Nixon. Star Trek is in peril. Losing money with every episode, Gene Roddenberry's ambitious wagon train to the stars tried, but was ultimately grounded, ending with the unfortunate turnabout intruder. Star Trek, unfortunately, was dead. But then, just like everybody's favourite Vulcan, it wasn't. Propelled by a boom in space excitement thanks in part to the real-life successes of NASA's Apollo program and, in large to TV syndication, the show found new life. Enjoying a wave of newfound appreciation, Star Trek's resurgence was confirmed with the show's first true convention in 1972, a gathering in New York that, depending on who you ask, birthed the fan convention that we all know and love today. Roll on to 1976. NASA names its first space shuttle after the Enterprise. Also, everybody had really floppy hair back then. I think I would have fit in just right. The end of the 70s saw Star Trek make the transition to the big screen with the highly anticipated The Motion Picture in 1979. While a technical marvel, visually, arguably, on par with Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey masterpiece, it was, unfortunately, a critical and commercial failure. And yet, Star Trek endured. The gamble to roll the dice once again in 1982 with the Wrath of Khan paid off, with the movie successfully relaunching the franchise on the big screen. More movies would follow. 1984's The Search for Spock, and 1986's The One with the Whales, the three movies forming a trilogy of sorts that all performed ably at the box office. Satisfied with the demand for more adventures, the time was finally right for Star Trek to return home to our television sets, and that's just what happened in 1987, where our story begins.
Tonight, the 24th century begins.
Welcome to the Enterprise.
In a special world premiere movie, Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Ready for departure, sir. Engage.
78 years have passed since the days of the original USS Enterprise. Now a new Galaxy Star ship has been designed with a new team of highly skilled Federation explorers. Starfleet Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Commander Riker, Executive Officer, Chief Medical Officer Crusher, and her brilliant son, Wesley. Lieutenant Commander Data, an android. The telepathic Troy. Geordi, a man with unique vision. Security Officer Yar, and Klingon Officer Worf.
Shields and deflectors up, sir.
Go to yellow alert.
Their first mission, investigate a new star base on planet Deneb IV.
Thou art directed to return to thine own solar system immediately.
A hostile alien threatens the crew.
Now go back, or thou shalt most certainly die.
But they're determined to finish their mission.
Arm aft photon torpedoes. Place them on ready status.
Hostile is now beginning to overtake us, sir.
Together, they stand trial before a merciless court.
You will now answer to the charge of being a grievously savage race.
Now, they have 24 hours to uncover the secrets of a strange world.
They're firing on Farpoint, sir.
The classic legend begins an all-new adventure.
Let's see what's out there.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Star Trek: The Next Generation premiered in the US on the 28th of September 1987, a Sunday for anybody who would like to know. The show's journey to the screen was an interesting one to say the least. It's a story that I'll leave for another time. If you haven't already watched the documentary Chaos on the Bridge, I recommend you give it a go. It's a real eye-opener. Beyond the closed doors and backstage madness, excitement was reaching fever pitch. For the first time in 18 years, we were going to get Star Trek on the small screen, a brand new cast, a brand new ship, and a brave new era for the franchise. Leading Star Trek's exciting foray into the 24th century was perhaps a surprising figure. Patrick Stewart, a balding Yorkshireman, was perhaps a radical departure from the stereotypical American leading men. Stewart would obviously go on to become an iconic component of the franchise, but his early days on the show were as rough as anyone else's.
Shut off that damn noise!
Joining Stewart was an excitingly young and diverse crew of talent. Jonathan Frakes as Commander William Riker, the new Enterprise's dashing first officer, and clearly the show's new Kirk figure. We also had Brent Spiner as Lieutenant Commander Data, ship's operation officer, and an android yearning to become more human. LeVar Burton as Lieutenant Geordi LaForge, the ship's helmsman, able to overcome his disability thanks to 24th century technology. Gates McFadden as Dr. Beverly Crusher, the Enterprise's chief medical officer with a tragic connection to our new captain. There was also Marina Sirtis as Deanna Troi, the ship's empathic counselor. Lieutenant Tasha Yar, played by Denise Crosby, the kick-ass head of security. Michael Dorn as Lieutenant Worf, Starfleet's first Klingon officer, and also one of the show's biggest changes, the removal of formal hostilities between humans and Klingons. Worf also got one of my favourite lines of the first episode.
Our personal request, sir. Permission to clean up the bridge.
And finally, Will Wheaton as Wesley Crusher, son of Beverly, and a character that was about to annoy a lot of people. And of course, we had the new Enterprise herself, NCC 1701D, an absolute beauty of a vessel and enormous compared to the original, a literal Rolls-Royce in space and the pinnacle of human engineering perfection. Oh, and it was also filled with lots of kids and civilians, another radical change to grow accustomed to. Encounter at Farpoint begins with the Enterprise en route to Deneb IV to collect Commander Riker and the rest of the crew before beginning its brand new mission. Before we can meet everyone properly, however, the ship is trapped by the omnipotent being Q, a character very similar in tone and ability as the original series' Trelane. Accusing humanity of being an aggressively savage race, Q appoints our new heroes as representatives of the entire human race, putting humanity on trial to determine our right to exist. Meanwhile, over at Deneb IV, Commander Riker, Geordi, Crusher, and Wesley explore Farpoint Station, the world's mysterious new facility and an outpost that may or may not be pivotal to Q's high-stakes challenge. Encounter at Farpoint is an odd show. Again, understanding more about TNG's origins will shed some light on some nightmarish stuff going on behind the scenes at the time. You don't have to be a genius to see that this episode felt like a 90-minute mishmash, a 60-minute story with a 30-minute story wedged in for good measure. But for the most part, it kind of works. Sure, we got some strange performances from some of the cast, likely coming as a result of first-time jitters and the pressures of following a crew who'd successfully become megastars and cultural icons at that point. For the most part, I think they handled it well. Visually, Encounter was a treat. From the beautiful opening credits showing a hyper-fast journey away from our home, to that gorgeous opening shot of the new Enterprise, the show's amazing ship separation sequence, the incredibly effective holodeck scene, and the final climatic shots of giant space creatures. This was an impressive first outing, and honestly, a lot of it still holds up fairly well today, maybe with the exception of Torres' freezing scene.
Frozen!
We should also mention the production design. Leading teams of countless incredible creatives, production designer Herman Zimmerman and Michael Okuda developed looks that, for the most part, would become iconic and set the standard for Star Trek for well over 20 years. The uniforms weren't quite as strong, but the show corrected that later, although I would say that the skirt variant wasn't bad. I'd wear one. But let's face it, Star Trek always shines when it comes to the technical. Did it nail the thing it's so often struggled with? The writing. Kind of. Encounter's story is decent and bears all the hallmarks of classic Trek, those sci-fi concepts ably condensed into its extended 90-minute runtime. Script-wise, it's a little lacking, with a lot of clunky dialogue that just feels so alien when you compare it to the show's later episodes. Again, I'd put a lot of this down to early show nerves from the performers, but also some blame has to be shouldered on DC Fontana and Gene Roddenberry's admittedly rushed script. The inclusion of Q, the literal wedge into Fontana's original story treatment, ultimately would be the aspect that the episode would become most remembered for, with the trial becoming an invisible arc that would bookend the entire show. For me, John Delancey was a real highlight of this first episode. Of all the characters here, he was the one thing that remained consistent throughout the 7 seasons, although admittedly his character would go on to become a little less antagonistic. The biggest disappointment for me was the poor use of the episode's alien race and villain in Groppler Zorn. At no point did you ever really consider the Bandy a threat, and considering their lack of technology, how did they manage to capture and turn a giant shape-shifting space jellyfish into a station? I'm not buying it. I'm sorry. Ultimately, Encounter at Farpoint was a clunky and awkward first step for the expanding Star Trek franchise, but it was also an exciting one nevertheless. There were some major changes that I'm sure upset a small group of people stubbornly clinging on to the look and feel and context of what they perceived Star Trek to be. Wow, that sounds familiar. But somehow it managed to retain the same combination of optimistic philosophy and pulpy space adventure. A strange new world, but one that still felt reassuringly familiar. Dead less than 20 years earlier, Star Trek's resurrection was complete. I'm giving Encounter at Farpoint 3 Starfleet Deltas out of 5. What did you think of Encounter at Farpoint, the TNG crew's first adventure? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't already, like this video and subscribe to my channel for more awesome Star Trek content coming at you as fast as Q's big ball of space stuff. TNG Reviews returns next week when we relive the time those space spores made everyone super horny. Sounds fun. Stay happy, stay safe, and until next time, live long and prosper.